Good morning, everyone. We're back working on the Flooded Corvair today, and this is going to be part 2 of the custom fuel injection build. On part 1, and I'll put a link up there, we fabricated the intake manifold and ran some of the wiring and then did a little data logging towards the end to kind of get an idea of what the carburetors were doing, you know, what's our air-fuel ratio at different part throttle, wide open throttle, that kind of stuff. Part 2 is going to be hopefully firing this thing up. We've got to do a fuel system, and then I'm going to show you a little bit about what our ignition system is going to be. Before we dive into that, if you like seeing classic cars get brought back to life, take just a moment and hit that subscribe button and click on the bell to be notified when new videos come out. I think one of the first things we need to do is get the original fuel system out of it. Now, I've drained the tank on the car, so it should be empty, but let's pull off the original fuel sending unit, the fuel lines, all of that stuff, because we're running all new lines, all new hardware, everything. Well, I popped the transmission tunnel off and pulled the vent tubing out of the way. And here is the original fuel line. This is the brake line going to the rear. I may go ahead and replace that while I'm in here since it is original, but this is the line that we're going to pop out. So let me just pop it out of these clamps all the way down, and then we can start remaking it out of stainless. Now that the original fuel line is removed, I think we need to go ahead and run some new fuel line on it. And just for your knowledge, I did go ahead and replace the brake line from the front to the back with all new, you know, nickel, silicone, copper, or whatever that stuff is. So, as far as the fuel line is concerned, I picked up a spool of this 3/8 stainless. Now, it's a little bit overkill for a Corvair, but, you know, I'm always of the mindset when you're building a fuel system, always build it for way more than you think that you'll need, because you never know what you might do in the future with a car. So it's always good to future-proof things. So we're going to go ahead and put in new 3/8 stainless line to replace the 5/16. So let me start unspooling this thing, get it straightened out, and we'll start throwing some bends in it. Here is my original 5/16 fuel line that came on the car next to the new 3/8 fuel line. So I'm just going to use this as a template here. The only variation that I'm going to make is, whereas this is coming off and kicking this way, I want to kick off and go back this way. So this will be a 180 here, but otherwise we're going to follow this exactly all the way back to the back of the car. All right, you need to make a little kick out this way, and then another one back, and then pretty much just a straight shot all the way back. With the stainless line run front to back, now I need to just connect the AN fittings to the stainless line. And the way that I'm going to do that is this. Let me show you. So I've got this AN fitting here, and the way this works is we've got the nut, a little ferrule, and then the male fitting itself. Just tighten this guy down, and then we'll have an AN fitting to hardline adapter, and that'll make it easier just to do some of the bends, the harder bends on here without having to bend the stainless itself. So let me put these on either end of our new stainless line, and then we can run the rest of the fuel system. What I'm thinking for the fuel system is using an in-tank fuel pump, and I think that'll be good for a couple of reasons. One, it's just convenient. It's quiet, they last a long time, they're easy, just plop it in and be done with it. Second, space is kind of a premium under a Corvair. You'd think that it'd be okay not having an engine in the front and, you know, transmission tunnel, all that stuff. But there's not a whole lot of room to put things under the front of the car. So I do want to save some room for other things. So we're going to be using a regulator and fuel filter combo like on a C7 Corvette. It's an LS style where you have an in, a return on one side, and then just a single line that goes up to the front of the car. So here's what I'm thinking for mounting the regulator or filter combo. This is the front of the car, driver's side, kind of tucked right up behind the fuel tank. And I think there's just enough room right there so that this is not going to hang any lower than the bottom of the car, and it'll give me room to put in the outlet, the inlet, and the return with just some 90 fittings. So let me drill a hole here, pop in a riv nut, and we can bolt this guy in place. I think it's time to go ahead and mount the intake onto the engine. But before we do, there's one thing that I want to make, and it's probably not necessary, but it'll kind of, give me a little peace of mind. And that is, I want to make a phenolic spacer to go between the intake manifold and the engine. The air-cooled engines get hot, and anything that I can do to reduce the heat going into the engine should only help with power. So I picked up a piece of 1/2-inch thick high-temp phenolic from McMaster Car. So we'll trace out the outline of the original plastic spacers onto the phenolic, get it cut out, and finally mount the intake. One down, one to go. So for the PCV system, I've just got a regular kind of off-the-shelf PCV. Just found one that worked, and I'm just going to plug it right down in. And then we'll run a tube from the top of the PCV up to the side of the throttle body. With the intake manifold mounted, I wanted to go ahead and wrap up the air intake system, and that includes from the throttle body to the mass airflow meter. So I reached back out to Silicone Intake Systems in Colorado Springs. I am not affiliated with them at all, but that's where I've gotten all of the aluminum tubing for the intake system, all the silicone couplers. So I'll drop a link in the description below, check them out. But I picked up some 3.5-inch polished aluminum tubing, and what I'm going to do here, see if I can do this one-handed, we are going to make a 90-degree coming off the throttle body, then another 90-degree, and then a straight section right into the mass airflow meter. So I think the first thing I need to do is cut this 180 in half, because it's going to be a tight bend coming directly off the throttle body, and I need as much room as I can. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and roll a bead onto this end, and then we can figure out where to cut for here to make the turn into the mass airflow meter. All right, with that fitted, looks like we just need to do a quick lop off of this side, and we can weld this in, and then just a short stub piece up to the mass airflow meter. So let me take some quick measurements, and this should be pretty straightforward. With the air intake system all finished up, the last bit of the puzzle, at least for the first iteration, is going to be the fuel system. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this, and I mentioned early on that I wanted to incorporate an in-tank fuel pump. And I'll be honest, I could have tried to go and develop my own system, but I reached out to a guy that's local here. His name is Ted Brown, and he runs a business that makes fuel injection systems specifically for Corvairs. It's www.corvair-efi.com, and I'll put a link in the description below. But this is what I picked up. This is his combination fuel pump and sending unit assembly. It's all stainless steel, pre-made, ready to go. So let's get the original one out of the tank and then drop in his new one here, and that'll be one step closer to finishing up the fuel system. We're almost ready to fire up the Flooded Corvair with the fuel injection system. There are a few little things that we still need to do, and one of those is run the rest of our fuel line. Now, a company called Max Speeding Rods reached out to me and asked if they could send me one of their PTFE fuel line systems. So what we got here is a -6 PTFE lined braided hose and assorted AN fittings. The reason we went with the PTFE line is because we talked a lot about future-proofing the car, and ethanol fuels are a thing right now. So this will work fine with gasoline, but if we ever decided that we wanted to run on E85 or just a higher ethanol content, the fuel hose would be ready for it. So I'll put a link in the description where you can pick up the -6 PTFE fuel line kit from Max Speeding Rods. All right, let's go lay out exactly what fittings need to go where, and then we can start plumbing this thing, and hopefully we'll be able to fire it up today. So here's how the fuel system is going to go. We're going to come out of the Ted Brown fuel pump, and I put a -6 adapter on here, and it's going to run across and do a 180 into the inlet side over on the regulator. And then we've got the outlet is going to come straight out to the new 3/8 stainless line. The return fuel pressure is going to come out the backside here and run up to the fuel filler neck. Now, I didn't show you, but when we had the whole suspension out and the tank out, I welded in a -6 bung into the filler neck. So we're just going to come up and then a 90 right into the filler neck. So let me just start measuring out some hoses and start making some bits, and hopefully this shouldn't take too long to get the fuel system plumbed. All right, with all of the fittings on, you can see kind of exactly what I'm thinking. So out of the tank, 45, run up along here, 180 into the regulator, a 90 out of the regulator up to the fuel tank, and then just a straight hose between the outlet of the regulator and the 3/8 stainless line. The final piece of the fuel system puzzle is going to be connecting up to the injectors themselves. Now I've got line run to a Y connector just about right here. So all we've got to do is just go from the Y, it'll split off, and then one to each one of the injectors. So let's make up these last few fuel hoses, and then I think it's time to actually see if this thing will run. All right, all the fuel lines are run, and I think it's time to fire it up, but I may just go ahead and wait until next time. Thanks for watching. Did you honestly think I was gonna do that? Come on, I would hate me if I did that. Let's go fire it up. All right, here goes nothing. Heard a fuel pump prime. All right, let's check and see if we have any leaks. No leaks up front. No leaks back here. No leaks there. No leaks there. All right, let's all pray, cross our fingers, see if this thing will fire up and run. All right, looks like we're connected. Looks like our map is reading, coolant temperature, or cylinder head temperature is reading. Let's try and turn the key, see what happens. Oh, it fired. It's trying. Oh, it's trying. It runs. It runs. All right, let's see if we can keep it running. All right, let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. So I had just a little bit too much startup fuel in it, backed out just a little bit of fuel in it, and took out some of the warm-up taper, and looky here. We've got a running fuel-injected Corvair. I'm almost afraid to hit the throttle. Well, it died before I did. So a little bit more work to do before you start playing with throttle, but let's get it idling well and then we can start messing with it some. So the car cranked up and I can't believe it's running as well as it is for as little work that I've done. I went ahead and turned it around just, so I don't suffocate with the exhaust blowing back into the garage. But let me show you what I've been doing a little bit. I did a few little tweaks on the tune to hopefully make it idle a little bit better, and I think it is. It's not great yet. It's still idling about 1,000, 1,100 RPM, but we're getting there. I think there's a couple of things already that I can see may be an issue moving forward. One, I think the throttle body may just be a little bit too big. You barely touch the throttle and it jumps up in RPM. So we'll play that by ear and see if I need to put a little smaller throttle body on it. Second thing that I've noticed is I decided to put a mass airflow meter on the car, and I'm not quite sure that that was a great decision. So for the moment, I've got it turned off and I'm just running speed density. Once I get it tuned, then, I'll look at seeing about, adding the mass airflow back in just to help economy a little bit. But let me go fire it up right now and you can kind of see what it's doing at the moment. All right, so we have the Tuner Studio up and running. Watch this. And it settles right down into a nice idle. It's idling about 1,000 RPM. Air fuel ratio hasn't come online yet. There it goes. And it'll fluctuate a little bit. It's running a little bit lean at the moment, but I can work on that. But here's the thing I really want to show you. It is snappy. I mean, that throttle just
bam, pops right off and sounds really good. There's still a lot of work that needs to happen before we can take it on its first test drive. The main thing being the throttle linkage. Now I have a plan on how I'd like to do it, so still waiting on some parts to show up. So once those parts show up, then we can fabricate the throttle linkage, and I'll show you kind of what I'm thinking about. Also, I want to work on getting this thing to do more than just fuel. In a perfect world, I want this thing to be distributorless. I want to have full control over spark and fuel. But those things are probably going to wait until part 3 of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for supporting us, supporting our channel. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing these videos out with your friends. It means more to me than you could ever know. Take care of yourselves. God bless. We'll see you next time. Hopefully driving.